maybe listen to him speak. No matter what, just let it go.
Pop, persuadable. What's going on, boo-boos? I miss you. I miss you all. I got some music coming, and I hope that you guys like the music that's going to be coming out soon. That's going to come out later this week. Worked very hard on those projects, yada, yada, yada. Anyways, let's talk about the Magician buff. So, the Magician is now going to finally get changed. They're going to remove the speed debuff for the Magician. So now when people go in to rescue the Magician from a rocket chair, it's not going to take as long as what it currently is right now. So to talk a little bit about the Magician and the history of Magician's been in the game since season 1, was very formidable, one of the most famous Identity V players on the NAEU server in history. Was a character or a person named Yo Mama. It was my teammate in the first 4 seasons, was one of the top 10 survivors that's ever played this game. For famous geisha users like Lan, they said they would rather go against a forward player than go against a Magician in the hands of somebody like Yo Mama. So the thing about Magician is that in seasons 1 and 2, he was very strong because that was when Clown and Geisha were really the top dogs. You didn't really see Spider and Ripper being top dogs until season 4. So because Magician was so powerful, it really separated Magician and Perfumer. Remember, Perfumer got released after Magician. Is that Magician, they could use their Magician wands at any point in time during the match, which something Perfumer couldn't do late game depending on where they were in the match. Of course, you can, drop down and use your perfume, but that was very situational. So to balance between Perfumer and Magician, they had Perfumer have 3 perfumes, Magician only had 2 wands, and because they knew that the wands could be used at any point in time during the match, they made it so he had a rescue debuff, and back in the day that used to be around negative 60% or 60% increase. Over time, Magician has been buffed, especially with the new additions to hunters, including what we call chip shot hunters, Bonbon, Sculptor. Bloody Queen's not really a chip shot hunter, but she got released around season 7, and eventually Magician fell behind, so they decided to buff him a little bit. And they decreased the debuff in terms of the rescue cooldown on the rocket chair. They also made it so his illusions, he could no longer be terror shocked, and they also made the changes to Magician where he would leave an illusion on the rocket chair. In the early seasons, that was not a thing. When you rescued him, you rescued him. Okay, so they've tried to address Magician with the new meta. So in the early seasons, he was super strong. That was when the character tier list came out, and when people said he wasn't that good, and in fact he really was. Then he fell apart around seasons 3 onward. Devs tried to change that over the past few adjustments, and now we're in the situation that we're in, where Magician has fell behind rapidly. He's no longer as good. I know that there are some Magician mains out there. I don't want to name any names, including Jogi. That try to tell you Magician's A tier, but he's really not. He hasn't been. He is not a top survivor. When you look at the top players and multiple servers, there's far more players who outrank him. I mean, Prisoner mains, for God's sakes, are doing way better than Magician, for crying out loud. So, and the reason being so is that it's not that Magician doesn't have potential, it's that the decode debuff, or rather, I'm sorry, the rescue debuff that he has is too big, especially with the new generation of chip shot hunters like Sculptor and Bonbon that we mentioned previously. So now the devs are pretty much at this point where they're like, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the rescue debuff entirely. Back in season 7, when Mechanic was nerfed, the devs came out with an announcement saying that the reason why survivors were losing was because of the anti-rescue. People were failing rescues more than ever before, and before Mechanic was able to overcompensate that because she was so powerful. They nerfed the Mechanic because she was too powerful, but then the problem was that when you were playing matches without Mechanic, when characters were constantly stuffed on the rescue, there was no way of winning, and so we saw a disparity between Hunter and Survivor win rates. So that's a little bit of the history between the history of where Magician was in the past, what devs have tried to do to acknowledge him falling behind, and what they have done recently. I think that this is what's going to really make Magician more meta. Magician is a hard counter to good Bloody Queen users, because no matter how accurate you are with the Bloody Queen, if you're a really good Magician user, you can use that illusion wand and immediately get out of danger. So it can really make a Bloody Queen even more of a tieable hunter than what she already is. I think that getting rid of the decode debuff, I keep saying that, getting rid of the anti-rescue debuff is going to be paramount to making Magician much more formidable. Will he be a tier 1 or rather round 1 tournament player? Probably not. Could be though. You know, Magician used to be really good because Mechanic used to have a global 8% buff to all of their survivors in terms of decoding speed, which got nerfed pretty quickly in season 1. So his ability to really use those wands are really important, because Mechanic can continue decoding and can prevent any sort of early game hit. So I think this is going to make Magician much more scary. I think the reason why hunters will go after a Magician is knowing that they can capitalize on the anti-rescue debuff, and now that's going to be removed. I think this is going to make Magician much more scary, much more formidable, making the rescues much easier in order to handle. I think what makes Magician so scary is that he doesn't really feed the hunters. That's what the difference is between a Magician and a Perfumer. Perfumers can really feed hunters, and for meta hunters, that's not good. That's not good when you're going against a Sculptor and you're feeding, even if you do a 3 Cypher Kite as a Perfumer against a character such as a Bonbon or a Sculptor. Despite Bonbon's recent nerfs, it's really hard to rescue against those sorts of characters. And so I think this is going to make Magician much more viable, because you're not going to see as much of that feeding, and you can really prolong the game if you use your Magician wands. Now, I am not somebody you should watch when I play Magician, because I love to fuck with hunters when I play Magician. I like to try to break their ankles and do more of the fancy stuff. But if you stick to a more conservative sort of kiting style, he can be a very, very scary survivor to go against. Now the issue is, and I know that the devs didn't want to take away the rescue debuff, and the reason being so is that in a weird way it did make Magician feel unique. It is what made Magician more unique than mostly all of the other characters. So what the devs have decided to do, and that's the reason why they didn't remove this prior to this moment, is that they want to make the characters feel unique in their own way. One of the things that the devs could have considered is giving him an additional wand, as well as continuing to keep the debuff, but that could have made him too powerful and the chitin too powerful. So they decided not to give him an additional wand, and instead go with the 2 wands, remove the rescue debuff. I say decode debuff way too much, guys. I think it's a good thing. I think that he has meta potential, especially with the entomologist nerf that's coming this way. I think that he can counter pretty much any hunter, and I think this is going to make him much more deadly in the correct hands and make it much easier for rescue mains to do their job. I don't think that the chitin aspect is going to change too much, but because there's really not much that's changing in that aspect, but I do think that he's much more viable, because at the end of the day, no matter how strong you think he is, the rescue debuff was way too much at that 40%, and I'm glad that it's being removed. I would like to hear your opinions, so for sure, definitely send them my way in the YouTube comments. I'll definitely give them a read and see what everyone else's opinions are. But I do think that Magician is much more likely to be meta now, because this is a huge change and it should not be underestimated or undervalued. And again, share your opinions with me. You guys all have a good day. Thank you for watching. Easy, quick video. Take care now. Bye-bye, boo-boos.